Another part of eligibility, apart from the country of birth, is education and or work experience. When we talk about education, you are supposed to have at least high school education in order to apply for the diversity visa lottery. I will explain in detail about high school education. What do they mean? How your high school in Uganda, how your high school in Sierra Leone, how the high school in Sudan, in South Africa is related to the high school in the United States. That will be number one. But what if you don't have high school education? By the way, people in Uganda, in Tanzania, secondary school or level, Form 4 is not high school. Just don't ask me, I finished Form 4 in Uganda or in Tanzania. That's not high school. High school in Tanzania and Uganda is advanced secondary school, which is Form 6. But in Kenya, high school is Form 4. They don't have Form 5 and Form 6. But before I go to explain more about education, if you don't have education of a minimum of high school, let's say you ended up in primary school, or you ended in secondary school, you didn't finish, you need to have at least 2 years of qualifying work experience. Listen very careful. Qualifying work experience, meaning not every work experience will be able to apply. It has to be a qualifying work experience. I will explain about that too. But let's go to the education part. When we say education, minimum of high school, we mean 12 years from primary school to secondary school. And that education must be in-class education. Not studying online somewhere by correspondence and you say that is high school. No. There are some countries, I can give you an example of Tanzania, where I'm originally from. Some people, sometimes they do what they do, like you finish primary school, maybe you didn't continue with the secondary school, you decided to take tuition or homeschool, or you go to a person who's teaching you, read books, whatever, and you take exam as a private candidate. You finish Form 2, you take the exam for Form 4, from your own as a private candidate student, you are taking Form 6 exam. That doesn't count as high school. They want high school to be in the class. To prove that, go and read the instructions about education. They gave even the good example that in the United States there is something called GED, General Equivalence Diploma of High School. That in America is people who maybe you go to high school, maybe you didn't do the high school, you decide to go to take the examination, which is equivalent to high school. If you have that one, that doesn't count as high school, according to the DV lottery instructions. So you need to have clear attendance of the class to finish 12 years of education. But in Tanzania, for instance, as I said, high school is 13 years instead of 12 years, because you do 7 years of primary school, you do 4 years of ordinary secondary school, and you do 2 years of high school, making you 13 years. But if you go to the university, most of the degrees in Tanzania are 3 years, making you to be 16 years. But in Kenya, they do 8 years of primary school and do 4 years of secondary school, making you 12 years of high school. And when they go to the university, they do bachelor degree for 4 years. So that makes also 16 years of from primary school to bachelor's degree. So that is the education you need to have. What about the results? I know you might have that question. By law, by the instruction, they don't care what results you have, because green card is not a merit-based immigration like in Canada, where you need to have these points, these points, these points. But I know some of the embassies sometimes might require you need to have at least C of English, C of D of mathematics, whatever. Some of the embassies might require that. That's why I usually tell people, if you are in high school, just you have high school, no matter what, even if they say minimum is high school, make sure if you win, you have to put a good work experience, no matter whether, unless others you have bachelor degree, even if you don't have work experience, it's okay. But if you have high school, you are at the edge. What if they require to have B or C in mathematics? I got F. So should I lose that one? So to avoid that, you must make sure that you have at least work experience. I'll talk about work experience, but I want you to understand more about education. But this is very important. So if you don't win because you have high school, or because you ended in primary school, or you went in secondary but you didn't finish high school, you didn't win, or you're not going to win, not because of your education. It just happened you didn't win. The lottery selection, it is 100% random. It doesn't care the level of education. When they are doing the random selection, the criteria for random selection are only coming from the country of eligibility, are only based about what background to have the photo, looking about if you are wearing the glass or not. They are basic information. But if you win, that is when you are going to show, to write which school did you go, when did you graduate, the address of your school. But at the time of selection, they don't care whether you have PhD, whether you have masters, whether you have bachelor, whether you have diploma, whether you have high school, whether you ended in primary school. They don't care. I know many people who have primary school won the DV lottery. I know people with masters and PhD, they haven't won more than 4 times. They've applied it. So when they are doing the application, you are supposed to select the education. Primary school, high school, no diploma. So the word diploma is very confusing to people. In many countries, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, the word diploma, it means a level of education. If you finish certain level of primary school, or you went to junior high school, didn't finish high school, and then you went to get a diploma, that is not equivalent to high school. You don't have high school. I will explain to you what does that mean. But if you finish, let's say high school, or you want to do diploma in other countries is the level of education. In America, diploma is the certificate. When you finish Bachelor of Science, when you finish high school, they give you the certificate that Ernest Makulilo, you have been awarded a bachelor degree in political science. That, with the bachelor degree, with honor, whatever, that certificate of completion, that in American English is called a diploma. So diploma in America is not the level of education. When they say, did you finish high school diploma? Meaning you finish high school and you have the certificate of completion. That's the meaning of high school diploma. If you went for high school, you didn't graduate, you don't have the certificate, it will say high school, no diploma. If currently you are doing bachelor's degree, you are a university student, if you have already graduated, by graduating is not about the graduation ceremony. If you finish maybe in May or in June, there are some countries you finish in May or June, graduation is in December. The day you finish your final exams and the results came out, you are cleared, you have already graduated. Graduation doesn't mean that to wear that gown. That doesn't mean the graduation. You have completed your bachelor's degrees education. You are no longer going to school. So if you have completed bachelor's degree, you will say, you will choose undergraduate degree or undergraduate degree, whatever they put there. But if you are currently a university student, you will select some university courses. Some university courses, meaning you are still studying, or you went to the university, studied some of the courses, but you haven't graduated. Master's education. If you are still a student, you haven't finished your master's, it will say some graduate level courses. If you have already completed doctorate, you will put doctorate. If you are still a student doing doctorate, you will select some doctoral courses. But still, don't put the wrong level of education. Think that if I say I have bachelor degree, because I plan to go to do bachelor degree, that they will select you. Don't do that. Just put the correct level of education, because the selection doesn't care the level of education. In the DV lottery application, there is no any place where you are going to put the number of working experience. There is only section of education. though that doesn't matter on the selection part. If you win, yes, it matters. You have to put the education, where you studied, and you will put the work experience after winning when you are going to fill the visa form. But all in all, it is when you are going to fill the form, you put only education. Don't lie your education level. Don't. Put the correct, try to be as truthful as possible, because it might cost you a lot, sorry. So that is education. Don't ask, what about this West African education, whatever. If you, from primary school up to the day you finish without repeating class, it is 12 years of education. That is high school. But if your country has ordinary secondary school and advanced secondary school, the advanced one, the highest level of high secondary school, when you finish that education, you are going to do bachelor degree. That is the high school level education. Any question up to that particular moment? So, if you finish primary school, you went for vocational training, you can select vocational training. But vocational training doesn't mean it's going to offset the going to high school. Meaning, when you put vocational education, which is good, then you'll go to put work experience. I'll talk about work experience, but just vocation is just a vocation. You went to, like in Tanzania, they have vocational education training, whatever Tanzania is called, VETA, or you went to do mechanic school, which is a trade school. It's okay. You can say on the application that you have vocational education. You don't have high school, you have vocational. But still, you will be required to have 2 years of qualifying work experience. That is education. When you win, even if you have high school, still, even if you have masters, even if you have PhD, when you win on the area of work experience, you have to put work experience, whether it's paid work experience, whether it's unpaid work experience. We'll talk about that. But don't assume work experience must be paid getting the salary. So that is education when you are going to apply for the diversity visa lottery. There is no any place you're supposed to upload results or the certificate when you apply for the DV lottery. The only document you're supposed to upload is your passport, is the photo with the white background. We'll talk about the photo requirement. But the rest of the documents, you are not supposed to submit. The education documentation, work experience documentation are only required when you go to the DV lottery interview at the US Embassy. Even at the time you win and the KCC, Kentucky Consular Center, they are going to ask you for the documentation. They are not going to ask you for the education documentation or work experience documentation. They will ask you for other documents, but not those documents. Those documents are going to be discussed as eligibility when you go to the DV lottery interview at the consular's officer at the US Embassy in your country.